I'll kind of go up and get in position.
Okay,
Can you see who's logged on to this?
No, I can see how many. Nobody's logged on yet, and they can put questions in the chat. Like you can look at that after. Tight quarters.
There's a chair right there. There's a chair right there. I was pointing at that chair over there. Yeah, sure. How do you recognize it?
we're going to get started. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome. I'm Kate Watson. I'm the Atlantic publicist at Nimbus Publishing, and I really would like to welcome you to this hot ticket item, the launch of Bird Road by Michelle Wamboldt. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. The land is governed by the treaties of peace and friendship. We recognize that we are all treaty people and have responsibilities to each other and this land. We also recognize the 400-plus year history of communities of African descent and the 50 African Nova Scotian communities throughout the region today. We are grateful to work in Mi'kma'ki. We are continually learning more about how we can deeply engage and move forward with the work of truth, reconciliation, and equity. We recognize that without action, an acknowledgement is empty. It marks the beginning of the work ahead of us, not the end. I want to thank everybody who's had a hand in bringing this incredible book to life, including the book's amazing editor and Nimbus's managing editor, Whitney Moran, who would have loved to have been here today. I can't tell you, but she loves you and loves this book. As well, I'd like to thank Heather Bryan for the stunning design of the book. She's also the co-owner at Nimbus Publishing. I want to thank the Canada Council for the Arts and the province of Nova Scotia, whose support makes our publishing program possible. And thank you to Novelty Bookstore and Gifts for welcoming us into this lovely space. And of course, thank you to Michelle Wamboldt for writing this wonderful novel. And now, I invite Michelle's longtime friend, Jill Sears, to tell us a bit more about the Woman of the Hour.
I didn't get to pre-approve.
No. There's no editing of this. Well, good evening. I'd like to welcome you to Truro, the setting of Bird Road. Tonight we gather to celebrate Nova Scotia's newest author, Michelle Wamboldt, and to help her launch her first book, Bird Road. A special welcome to Michelle's family, and we also think of her loved ones who could not be with Michelle today. Michelle grew up in Truro. She attended Willow Street School, Truro Junior High, and Cobequid Educational Center. She is a Dalhousie and Humber School of Journalism graduate. You may not know that Michelle is also an accomplished tennis player, jive dancer, karaoke singer, painter, cook, and sees the potential in abandoned century homes. Some might come tonight in support of a lifelong friend. Others have come to meet for the first time the author behind this extraordinary story. You're in for a real treat tonight, as you will have the opportunity to listen to readings from Bird Road and to share in a time of open questions and book signing. Michelle now lives in the South Shore. I have walked Crescent Beach many times with Michelle. As much as I prodded for details on her book she was writing, Michelle would never disclose any details other than, I think you're going to be shocked. On a warm September evening, an intense thunderstorm rolled into Crescent Beach. At the height of the storm, I received a text from Michelle. She knows my extreme fear of thunderstorms. I expected the text to be one of comfort. However, it turned out to be something a lot more special. The text was a book excerpt under the title, Thunderstorm. Michelle had finally revealed a glimpse into her book. I was already captured. I want to share two phrases from the book, not only because they were perfect for the night of the thunderstorm, but they're also perfect for tonight. Good things are coming. God is getting ready for a special day. Michelle, congratulations on your book. Congratulations on your special day. Good things are definitely coming your way. Your whole town, Truro, is immensely proud of you. Please show Michelle a Truro a warm welcome.
Oh man. Oh, you'll have to bear with me because I might just cry. Twice, for sure. Thank you so much, Jill, and thank you, Kate. I don't know where you went. Oh, there you are. The last 2 weeks, I can say without a doubt, have been totally overwhelming for me. Since the book came out, I've heard from so many people, so many friends and family from Truro, all across the country, and it's just been a shock to hear what people have to say about the words I have written and how they've touched them and how they've loved them. And so it's just incredible. I can't believe I'm here today in Truro with a book I wrote about Truro, with all of my favorite people from Truro. I mean, I think I know every single person in this room, so it's incredibly special to me that you're all here, and I can't thank you all enough. So, that being said, tonight I'm going to just talk a little bit about what inspired me to write this book, and then read a little bit from it for you. I know some of you have read the book, as you've told me, and there's a lot of secrecy in the book and some suspense, so I'm definitely not going to give anything away tonight for those who haven't read it yet. So I'll mainly be reading a few parts from the beginning of the book. So, what prompted me to write this book? I knew I wanted to write a story about my grandmother, and when I really became serious and decided I was going to do that, I knew I wanted to write something with memories in it. I wanted the book to be a series of memories that a person would have that bring them to a certain point in their life. We all have memories. We all choose what memories we hold on to and the ones we want to let go. And some of those are good and some of those are bad. And we choose which ones stay and go. And when I was growing up, my grandmother shared a lot of stories with me. And a memory I have that is vivid in my mind is, it's almost like it's my own memory because I can see her walking the road from Pictou Road down through town to the end of Queen Street where the maternity home is on the day that she gave birth to my mom, who's here. And that was on July 18th, 1946. And it was a sweltering hot day. Sorry. She does not look. But it was a sweltering hot day, and she wore a large winter coat to cover her stomach as she walked alone. And she told that story I don't know how many times, probably every year on my mother's birthday. And so it's just so vivid in my mind. And I thought, when I tell her story, that's what I want. I want to envision her walking down that road. I want her to be telling the memories of how she got to that point in her life, what the specific moments that led to this birth of her child. So that's what I've attempted to do. And because our memories are triggered usually by things, each chapter in the book is something that triggers her memory. So, for instance, like all of us have a trigger for memory for smell. And so I have a red antique cupboard in my home, and I bought it in New Brunswick. And when I went into that store and opened the doors, a smell came rushing out, and it was the exact same smell of my grandmother's house on Church Street. And it had tobacco smoke, or pipe smoke, and that old musty smell of old homes. And I was transported right back to Church Street, where Jill and I used to go after brownies once a week. And so every day when I open those cupboard doors, I'm still reminded of my grandmother. And another one is taste. And I can't have a pink peppermint without thinking about my grandmother. She had this crystal dish in the living room on the coffee table, and every time you went to pick it up, it was really heavy because you're only 7, and it would tinkle like on the edge of the glass, and everybody could hear it, and you'd think you were going to get caught. It's just something I always remember. And I told the same story the other night at the lunch I had in La Have, and today as we were driving up, my son Finn shared with me that that is his only memory of my grandmother, is that when he was little, she had that same dish. So I thought that was kind of special. So in the book, Helen has these kind of triggers as well. So every time I thought about like what would bring these memories upon her, and I thought, well, every Christmas when she smelled a freshly cut spruce, she'd be taken back to a certain Christmas day in her life. And every time she had a pink peppermint, maybe she was going to think of a special person that she had. Or every time she heard a train whistle, she was going to think of her father. So that's the kind of reasoning behind the chapter headings in the book. And because I had this vision in my mind of her walking down the road and having these memories, I knew not everybody was going to have the same vision. And so I don't know if you can see that there's a map at the beginning of the book. And I had the idea, well, maybe if I put a map, because not everybody's from Truro. And I thought, well, people who aren't might not know all these places, and this would give them a better idea of the setting for Helen's life. So this map depicts Truro back in 1930s and 40s. And I went to my publisher and I said, what do you think of a map? And they're like, oh, it's a great idea. And I said, well, I know who I want to do it. And some of you would know my good friend Kim Dano, who's an amazing artist. And I said I would like her to do it, and she graciously agreed. And if you haven't seen it up close, these buildings are just gorgeously depicted. Like, they look exactly like they did back then, and many of them are still standing and look the same today. So I thank Kim for that, and it's special that she's a part of the book with me. So that's kind of the why, and now I'd just like to share a little bit about the book with you. And as you know, it's set in Truro, and Truro, like most small places around the world, has its own secrets and gossip and hearsay and all of that kind of thing. And my grandmother's life and her family also had a lot of secrets. So I knew that I wanted to put secrets into the story, and so I took the ones I knew about and really built them up and fictionalized them and added a few more. And so through the book, secrets are something that trail along and that help the plot keep moving. So that being said about Truro, I'll read the first words of Bird Road. This was a small place where the wind carried whispers like snowflakes, and all heads turned eagerly to catch them on their tongues. So that kind of says a bit about that. And that's actually one of my favorite parts of the book, are those lines. And they came to me one night when I was just about to sleep. And that's usually when my best ideas come to me, or when I'm in that kind of really relaxed state between sleep and awakeness. And I'm usually like, oh, just let me fall asleep. And sometimes I don't get up and write it down, and I really regret it when I don't, because all I can remember is I had a really good idea. But that night I got up and I wrote that one down, so I'm pretty happy I did. The next piece I'm going to read is from the prologue of the book, and this as well came to me in the middle of the night, and I got up and wrote it down, and it is still in my bedside table on the envelope that I wrote it on, pretty much word for word as it appears in the book. My mother was not one to dwell in the past. Digging up old memories is like eating cherries, she said. Some people choose the sweet every time, and then there are the others, those who always choose the sour. She said that either way, you were left with a slimy pit in the palm of your hand. The ghost, she called it. No good can come from that. I don't agree with my mother. I have always liked the sweet and the sour. You really can't appreciate one without the other. Memories are like that too. Sometimes they're all you have, so you take what you can. When I close my eyes, I take myself back to that road. I feel the hot sun on my back. I smell the wild roses. I taste the road dust on my tongue, and I hear the children playing in the fields. I see every building I pass and every person who looks my way, and I ache with the child in my belly, ready to be born. That road holds all the ghosts of my life. On every corner, in every building, under every tree and down every lane, I see them watching me and judging the past. all those I loved and all those I did not. They want to relive it, stir it up again, and see how it will all settle back down, like a child's snow globe. These memories are the map of my life, each triggered by their own essence, each found on the road I walked over 60 years ago when my baby came and saved my life. So that's the prologue of Helen when she's older and thinking back to the road she walked. And the book starts out where she's living with her family. She's only a young girl and they live in a logging camp. And she's with her mother and father. She's an older brother, Russell, and a younger sister, Uni. So what I thought I'd do is just introduce you to a few characters in the book that are kind of key to her development. And one of those is her best friend, Madge. And Madge is someone who is with her throughout the book and has a very significant role to play. My first morning of school, my mother fussed over me for the first time in my life. I was scrubbed like the kitchen floor. My hair was combed, my dress ironed, and I was given a lunch. As I went out the door, she grabbed my arm. People can say you have a no-good drunken father, but they'll never say your mother didn't take care of you. You remember that. I kept my head down and stared at my worn shoes. You're representing your mother, and you best always be looking clean and acting proper. Yes, Mother. I started down the road as fast as my feet would take me. It was hard to know whether I was more excited about school or leaving my mother behind. She had started to take in laundry, saying we couldn't rely on my father for money. So I knew my time at school would be only a brief escape from my chores. Soon enough, I would be home again, elbow deep in suds, scrubbing some stranger's shirts. I could hear the bell ringing as I crossed the road and approached the little schoolhouse. I told myself I would have to walk faster tomorrow so I wouldn't be late. The other children all broke free from their little groups and ran towards the stairs. I could feel my stomach tightening as I came up behind them. I was nervous, but I was happy to be the last to enter the school. I walked through the door and was greeted by a flurry of ribbons and curls. I'm Madge Summers. You're new. Who are you? What's your name? How old are you? She bounced from one foot to the other and smiled her big white grin. She had the prettiest hair, like pure sunshine, and her eyes were blue like robin's eggs. She wore a bright pink dress and red shiny black shoes. I simply stared at her. A proper-looking lady appeared at the front of the room and asked us all to take our seats. Her hair was pulled back in a bun, and not one strand was out of place. She stood with her shoulders tall and straight, and her dress was crisp and clean, not one wrinkle to be found. She looked happy and serious at the same time. I wanted to reach out and touch her to make sure she was real. Madge took my hand and led me down the aisle. I could see there were 4 rows of desks, but I dared not look around. You'll sit with me, Madge said. There were initials and partial words and numbers carved into the wood. I traced them with my fingers and wondered if I was expected to write my name on the desk. When the teacher began to speak, I looked up and saw a large map of the world hanging behind her. I'd never seen a real map before, only the kind my father had drawn for me. I could see Africa and China. China, right there in the wall. I wondered what little girls were doing in China right now. Were they learning to read? What about little girls in Africa? What were they doing on a warm October day? Did they all go to little white schoolhouses? Madge nudged me and pointed to the teacher. Helen McNutt. I asked if you could come up to my desk, please. My tummy nodded. I'm in trouble already and I haven't learned one thing yet. I've been called to the teacher's desk. Mother will be furious. Leave that one there. But we learned a little bit about Mother and about Madge and about the teacher, whose name is Miss McMillan. That's going to be so important to Helen's life. One of the other people who is very important to Helen is her Aunt Gertie, and she happens to be one of my favorite characters in the book as well. And this is the first time that Helen meets her Aunt Gertie, who she didn't know about, by the way. Not long after we moved to town, I came home from school to find a car outside. More surprising than finding my mother sitting behind the kitchen table laughing with another woman, was finding out that woman was a relative. My mother explained that our aunt, my father's sister, lived only a few miles away. Gertie was her name. She was married to a man named Johnny. We had an aunt and an uncle. I could not remember my parents ever speaking about having brothers or sisters. We had never met any relatives, not a single grandparent, aunt, uncle, or cousin. I was quite literally speechless as I took in the woman sitting at the table. She had red curly hair and the largest bosom I had ever seen. She wore bright lipstick and lots of jewelry, colored beads, drooping earrings, and rows of bracelets. Her smile was as natural as the morning sun, and it lit up the room as she laughed at my shocked expression. I guess our Jim never let on he had a sister by the look on this one's face, she said. My mother shook her head and took me by the arm, pulling me closer to the table. Say hello to your Aunt Gertie, Helen. Uni was standing beside me, pasted to the side of her chair, her head hanging down shyly, but her eyes peeking up to take in this new stranger. The teacups were half full and Aunt Gertie was smoking a cigarette, but there were no other butts in the ashtray, so I figured I hadn't missed too much. Hello, I said. I couldn't help but smile at her as I could see the resemblance to my father. They had the same eyes. How was school today, Helen? She took both my hands and held them while she talked to me. Are you as smart as your daddy? He was always a smart one in our house. I like school, I said, not wanting to brag about how well I did. And I bet you're at the top of your class. She gave me a wink and laughed again as she took another drag of her cigarette. This one's got the hair, doesn't she? She pulled Uni up into her lap and admired her fine blonde hair. You're just the cutest thing, she said, squeezing Uni closer, almost smothering her in those large bosoms. I moved off to the side of the kitchen. Don't you worry, Helen. It was like she read my mind. You're going to be a beauty one day. I can tell. Just you wait and see, Blanche. She'll be turning heads when she's older. My mother raised her brows and looked over at me. She looked skeptical. I was pleased and devastated at the same time. My fears were confirmed. I was ugly. But I was given hope should Aunt Gertie's prediction come true. So Helen and her mother throughout the book do have a bit of a challenging relationship, I guess we can call it. And in this small piece I'm going to read, Helen has just come back from a visit after school at her friend Madge's house. And Madge's family is much more well off than Helen's. But it's not something Helen and Madge would ever think of or notice, because children don't notice those kind of things. It's the adults in our lives that do. And as often is the case, that's the case with Helen's mother. When I got home, I took the ribbon from my pocket and wrapped it around my fingers. It was soft and pretty. I owned nothing like it. Mother was busy baking in the kitchen. I quietly went to her room and propped the mirror up on her dresser. I tied the ribbon around my hair as I had seen Madge do. It wouldn't stay in place and it slid down beneath my wiry curls. You'll never be like her. My mother stood behind me in the doorway. I could see her in the mirror. You'll never be good enough for them, she said. She's in God's pocket, that Madge. And you and I, well, we'll never be there. Everything will always go her way. You just wait and see. Our eyes met in the round glass, and we held each other's stare. Get to the laundry. She turned and went back down the stairs. I looked at myself as Madge had earlier that morning, searching for something, but unsure what that something was. I took the ribbon from my hair and put it back in my pocket. I thought of the mean old battle axe from the mill, looking me over like I was trash, and Madge's mother saying they were visiting their friends. I felt the satin ribbon in my pocket, and I hated my mother for saying such things. Maybe Boston will be better, I thought, with a sudden longing for my father. I went down the stairs slowly, one step at a time. I knew the wash tub was waiting for me, and I was in no hurry to get there. Most of you know my brother Jeff, and he read my book not long ago, and he said, "Could you have any happy things happen?" I said, "There's some happy." So, the last chapter, which is called Long Underwear, I definitely have to read a bit of that while we're here in Truro, because you can guess where that takes place. And the Stanfield's Mill does take quite a bit of time in the book, and it's an important part of the book. And my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother all worked at the mill at some time in their lives. And I think we'd all be hard-pressed to find somebody, to not know someone who had worked at the mill. And so Helen, at this time, has grown, and she is working in the mill at this point. Since the beginning of the war, new people were being hired constantly, and the mill was busier than I'd ever seen it. I was asked to work weekends, helping to sew labels on woolen blankets. The word was these were for the war. During lunch break, one of the new girls began telling us stories about her uncle who had worked in the dyeing room for years. She told some funny ones about boys turning their hands blue and silly things that most of us had heard before. Everyone laughed along with her. She was young and she wanted to fit in. Apparently, one lady had some really sticky fingers, she said. They thought she was stealing. They suspected her for quite some time, but nobody did anything about it. One day when she was leaving, they pulled her up to the office. One of the secretaries had to be there because she was a woman and all, and they asked her to lift her dress. Well, wouldn't you know it? She had 3 pair of men's long underwear on. She slapped the table for effect and started to laugh. It took her a few minutes to realize nobody else was laughing with her. Her name was Kendall or Cameron or something like that. She looked from one face to the other, trying to pull her audience back in. A few girls in the room glanced at me when she finished her story, knowing she was speaking about my mother-in-law. I finished my tea and smiled back at the girls. Luckily, before the young one could speak again, the bell rang and we all rose in silence to return to our machines. What the new girl didn't know was that we all knew these stories, and stories like this. Stories of people stealing or cheating with their coupon books. I never knew of anyone fired for such behavior. In fact, more often than not, if someone was found stealing, they were back at work the next day, like nothing had ever happened. Sometimes the families involved would find a box of food on their back step. No questions asked. It was never confirmed that old man Stanfield sent those boxes, but we all knew he did. He looked after his own. He knew people had hard lives, and sometimes they made bad choices. So his workers remained loyal. The new girl didn't know this yet. She didn't realize we were like family. We might fight and disagree, but we were always loyal. A few days later, I was having dinner at my mother's house. Uni was not home, but Aunt Gertie was there. I asked her what she knew about my mother-in-law. Marjorie Campbell and I hardly knew each other, and she hadn't shown any interest in me. Aunt Gertie told me Deke Campbell was a mean-spirited man, and that life was more than hard for his wife. She was the main breadwinner in that family. She had to feed all those kids, 7 of them, and put up with his drinking and abuse. The poor thing had no other choice. Where could she go? She had no family of her own, just that miserable excuse for a man. My mother sat behind us, listening but not offering an opinion. I told them about the story from work. I know that story, Aunt Gertie said. My mother nodded that she knew it too. But, Aunt Gertie continued, the part most people don't know is that when that stick-thin little woman took off the underwear, just in front of the secretary, mind you, not the men, that woman was covered in bruises all over her legs and stomach. No one said a word about it. She was given the underwear to take home in a bag and told to come back to work the next day. She paused. She could see I'd been looking down at my hands and twisting my handkerchief. When I looked up, Aunt Gertie caught my eye and continued, "You see, he never hit her in the face. He didn't want anyone seeing his work. He'd been doing this for years, and he knew better than to raise any suspicions." Every time. So that's just a little sample of Birth Road, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions or anything anybody had to ask. If you don't, that's okay.